Hi boys and girls. I'm sorry this video is a lot later than I wanted it to be. I just had a really busy night, but here I am, and hopefully you'll find this what I hope will be a quick video tutorial helpful. So I found a couple of problems that we're going to work together, and you can either just follow along with me as I work them, or you can pause the video as we read the problem or after we read the problem, work the problem, and then see how well you did. So I found these problems on biologycorner.com. Biology Corner tends to have a lot of AP Biology word problems on it, so I don't recommend that you get your problems or your practice problems off of that site, because they're going to be, some of them are going to be pretty difficult. But I did find some simpler ones that we're going to work on today or tonight. So we're going to start with this second one here. So let me just make it a little bit, whoa, let's make it a little bit more crooked. That's not helpful. Okay. All right. So, jeepers, sorry about that. I'm trying to help, and it's just kind of making a mess, isn't it? Okay. So, let's get rid of that. Wow. There. Okay. So, in humans, we're going to do this problem right here. In humans, tongue rolling is a dominant trait. So, tongue rolling. Those with the recessive condition cannot roll their tongues. Bob can roll his tongue, but his mother cannot. He is married to Sally, who cannot roll her tongue. What is the probability that their firstborn child will not be able to roll his tongue? So some advice that I gave students today was, first read the whole problem through, then read and look for what are the genotypes of the parents, and then look for what is the problem asking for. So again, read the whole problem through, then go back and read and look for the genotypes, and then look for what kind of questions is the problem asking. So we read it through again. I'm going to read it again. In humans, tongue rolling is dominant. Okay, tongue rolling is dominant. Those with the recessive condition cannot roll their tongues. Bob can roll his, but his mother could not. He's married to Sally, who cannot roll her tongue. What is the probability their firstborn child will not be able to roll his tongue? Okay, so we need to make a Punnett square. And again, Punnett squares don't have to be gigantic. You're just putting one letter in each box. And you know what I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to make this, I'm going to move it down a little bit because I don't have any room to write my letters. So I'm going to move it down. All right. So it says here, okay, so the dominant trait is tongue rolling. So let's see. So you can either roll your tongue or you can't roll your tongue. So what would we use for the letter? Remember, it's the first letter of the dominant trait. So let's go with R. Okay, so we're going to say capital R is the dominant trait for rolling of the tongue. Okay, rolling tongue. So Bob can roll his tongue, but his mother could not. He's married to Sally, who cannot roll her tongue. So we know Sally, because it's recessive, we know Sally has to be lowercase r, because the only way that recessive trait can show up is if she has two recessive genes. So we know that. We also know it says Bob can roll his tongue, but his mother could not. So if his mother could not, chances are Bob is heterozygous because he got this recessive gene from his mom, who could not roll her tongue. Okay, so let's do this Punnett square. Capital R, lowercase r, capital R, lowercase r, lowercase r, lowercase r, lowercase r, lowercase r. So I think most of you, the place in this problem where you would be confused is knowing Bob's genotype. So he can roll his tongue, which means his options would have been capital R, or capital R, lowercase r. And I chose this one because his mother could not roll her tongue. So he got this recessive gene from his mother. So that's why I chose capital R, lowercase r. So I made my Punnett square. So 2 of the 4 are heterozygous, which means they can roll their tongue, and 2 are homozygous recessive, which means they cannot roll their tongue. And the question was, and let's erase all of my writing here, what is the probability that their firstborn child will not be able to roll his tongue? So the probability is, and what do we always write? Probability in percent. The probability is 50%. 2 out of 4. And 2 out of 4 is 50%. Okay, let's try this next problem. It says, in goats, a recessive gene causes the goats to faint when they are startled. A farmer breeds 2 goats that have never fainted, and their first offspring faints 2 days after its birth. What must the parents' genotypes have been? Show the cross to prove it. Okay, so we did the first thing that I said, which is, remember, read the problem. Okay, and then the second thing was reread, looking for genotypes. And then look for the questions. Okay? So you can read the whole problem all the way through, then reread it, looking for what the genotypes are, and then look for the questions. So let's go back and look for it. A farmer breeds 2 goats that have never fainted. So if they've never fainted, that means they have to have the dominant gene, which is, let's see, what would we call it? Faint. Well, faint is recessive, so we don't want that. So never fainted. So let's call it N for never fainted, because faint is recessive and never fainted is dominant. So we're going to use an N, okay? And because both parents, 2 goats, have never fainted, we know they can be one of 2 things. They can be that, capital N, or they can be that, capital N, lowercase n. But now we were given one more hint as to what their genotypes have to be. Their first offspring faints 2 days later. So we know they can't be this, because if they were, then their babies would also be that, and they wouldn't faint. So we know they have to be that. But what it says is, show the cross to prove it. So that's what we're going to do. So let's move all this business up here, and we're going to show the cross to prove it. So let's just, for kicks, let's say we decided that the mom and the dad, let's say that we said that just the dad was capital N, and the mom was capital N, lowercase n. Let's just try it. Capital N, lowercase n, and capital. So we combine this. Remember, anytime you have homozygous dominant, you will never have a recessive offspring. And let's prove it. Capital N, lowercase n, capital N, lowercase n. None of these babies will faint. All right? Won't happen. So let's look at something that actually makes sense. So let's draw a Punnett square where both of them are heterozygous because they don't faint, so they have that dominant trait, but they can give birth to something with a recessive trait. So we'll do this. and then that, sorry, and then this. So there's our fainting baby. Very sad, but there's our fainting baby. So that way we prove that you can have two parents that do not exhibit that recessive trait, but that can give birth to a goat. Goat? Yeah, a goat that does. Okay, it took me a few minutes to try to find some more Punnett square problems that you haven't seen because I've tried to give you a lot of practice. So I'm sorry it's taken me so long, and then for some reason, I don't know, I'm having some technical difficulties. So it's 8:03, and I wanted to have this posted by 6. So I'm going to wrap this up pretty quick. So I found some pretty simple ones. So here you go. So red hair is dominant in leprechauns. Yes, leprechauns. Luke is homozygous, dominant for this trait, and Lola is heterozygous, dominant for this trait. So Luke, Lola. So this is where we would put the genotypes, okay? And then what is the likelihood of baby leprechaun having red hair? So red hair, that means the baby leprechaun is actually going to have the dominant trait. So Luke is homozygous dominant, which means if we know that red hair is dominant, homozygous dominant is going to look like that. So let's actually put this right over here next to Luke. Okay, so Luke is homozygous dominant, and Lola is heterozygous dominant, which is repetitive because actually heterozygous, you don't have to say heterozygous dominant because it's always dominant. So heterozygous. So we'll put Dad up here and Mom over here, and let's work this out. And if I ever make a mistake, just tell me. I know I made a mistake on that other explain everything that I did fast for 7th period, and you guys told me, so that was good. All right, so this looks right. All right, what is the likelihood of baby leprechaun having red hair? Well, 100%. What if I asked you what is the likelihood of him being homozygous dominant? Then you would say 50%. What is the likelihood of him being heterozygous? 50%. Okay, let's look at this next one. Green eyes are dominant in leprechauns. Luke and Lola are both heterozygous. That means they have one uppercase. Remember, hetero means different. They have one uppercase and one lowercase. So this G, capital G, lowercase g, capital G, lowercase g. Luke, Lola. I like that name. All right, let's put it together. Okay, we did the Punnett squares. Now we need to make sure we know the question, which I can't see here. All right, so I didn't take a picture of that. So let's see. I'm going to move this up. And it says, what is the likelihood of baby leprechaun being born with green eyes? So you're going to have to trust me on this one. The question is, what is baby leprechaun? What is the chance of being born with green eyes? All right, well, green means there has to be a capital G somewhere in that genotype. 1, 2, 3. So 75% green eyes. It doesn't say what the other, the lowercase g would be. I wonder what color the eyes would be if it's not green. That's kind of creepy. All right, so I'm going to leave you with this cute little comic. Get it? Heterozygotes. Get it? And then it says, just a little uneven. Allele uneven. All right, well, hopefully you get it. So basically, you are going to have to do Punnett squares. You're going to need to know vocabulary. Vocabulary like, I don't know what that was. Like heterozygous, homozygous. Let's see, dominant. Let's see, let's pull this up. Recessive. Ugh, that looks like recessive. Recessive. It's like I'm reading this off the test. Oh no. Genotype, phenotype. Remember, phenotype is the physical characteristic. Genotype are the genes. The two letters like AA or AA or AA. Ooh, that looks cool. Allele. Allele, remember, the allele are the genes which are represented by letters, okay? We need something to represent them. We represent them by letters, okay? Let's see. You need to know that Mendel is the father of genetics. That is the name of the guy that came up with genetics. You need to know that what is a trait versus learned behavior, right? So learning how to ride your bike is not a trait. It is a learned behavior. Having your blood type is a trait. Let's see. Okay. You need to know what is mitosis versus meiosis. Meiosis. What is the difference? This is cell division. This is where they come together. These have 23 chromosomes. This is where, when cells divide, they make clones of themselves. And there are, this happens with all body cells except sex cells. Meiosis only happens with sex cells because they only want 23 chromosomes. Because if they made more than 23 chromosomes, which we all like to say, then we would all be bananas. You need to know what fertilization is. Remember, fertilization is when the egg and the sperm come together. That's what fertilization is. What is it called when this egg and sperm come together? That is called a zygote. That is a fertilized egg. Let's see. You might be able to hear me turn the page. That might be a pretty good hint as to what I'm doing. So where do we find all this DNA? And so DNA and the chromosomes and the genes, they're all in the nucleus. Okay, all in the nucleus. We have 46 chromosomes in our body. Obviously, when they're cut in half, 23 in the sperm, 23 in the egg. I'm just looking here. All right. And then finally, ratios. So if I say to you, let's do a Punnett square here. And Mom has blue eyes. Dad has, let's move this down, brown. Dad has brown eyes, and he is heterozygous for brown eyes. Mom is homozygous for blue eyes. Brown is dominant. And I say to you, solve the Punnett square. So that's the first thing you're going to do. And then I want the ratio, okay, the ratio of blue eyes to brown eyes. You would do this, blue to brown would be 2 to 2, and you could simplify it 1 to 1. Okay? So what if I said, what is the ratio of heterozygous to homozygous? You would say, and let's move that stuff out of the way. So heterozygous to homozygous. So these are heterozygous, these are homozygous. So let's move this stuff out of the way. Heterozygous to homozygous 2. Again, 1 to 1. Now there are going to be times when it's not so simple. Let's say that we ended up with a Punnett square that had different genotypes in it. And don't ask me what would go here to make that. I don't want to get into that. But I might ask you to put this in a ratio, and you might have to have this going on. Okay? So if I said, give me homozygous dominant, which would be this, to homozygous recessive, to heterozygous, you would have to say 1 to 2 to 1. Remember, a ratio looks like this, or it could be now in that case, you couldn't do a fraction because you can't have 3, you can't do 1 to 2 to 1. That doesn't make sense. All right? So, I gave you all the vocab. You can rewind it. I really think that you guys are going to be fine. Just make sure you know the vocabulary. Make sure you understand that there are words that mean the same thing. So homozygous is the same as purebred, or pure breed, or purebred. And heterozygous, hetero is the same as a hybrid, or different. You remember that, and you're going to do great.